Welcome to Just an Average Citizen, the podcast that helps to educate, inform, and empower you to make an impact in Abilene and the Big Country. Happy 2024. Welcome to the first episode of the year. I'm so excited to be with you today and so honored that you would spend time with me talking about all things Abilene and the Big Country. If you have enjoyed any part of our episodes, would you please just subscribe and share this with your family and friends to help get the word out? Because I know that as we become a more educated and informed body, we will definitely begin making an impact in Abilene and the Big Country as God created us to do. You know, my friends all encourage me to follow my path into this direction, and I've been so grateful for their support. But they're like, we're not called to this governmental thing, and I agreed with them in the beginning. But as I began to do research and understand how crucial it is understanding the way our city works and how it makes an impact in our everyday living, I realized to some degree we're all responsible for knowing what's going on and being educated and informed. And so that's my job now, is to take all those little details that I've researched and making them palatable for you who probably is not quite so interested in all the nitty gritty. And so I hope that's a blessing to you, but I do think that as we learn the way things work, we can use our time and energy more effective to creating communities that reflect more of who we are, instead of feeling like we don't have much of a voice to make an impact in changing things for the better. And, you know, as I've been doing this research, I think there's some things that I might do differently, but I haven't found anyone to be completely, out of line or egregious in their behavior to some degree. And so it's helpful to know that when we understand the system and the processes, we don't see sometimes actions and behaviors in the same light as if we're ignorant or unaware of how things work. And so I came in kind of the back ways, and so I'm going to help you try to make an impact doing it in a more honoring and respectful way. Even as much as I tried to do it, I think I still just didn't understand. And, it's a process and trying to figure these things out. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of tools to help you know the process to begin engaging with the city officials in a level that makes everyone feel heard and understood. And so we're going to get there. We're going to get there slowly but surely. And that's the beautiful thing about what we're engaging with today. So I was going to share with you some upcoming announcements. They weren't anything necessarily super exciting, but I thought, hey, I'll let you know what's going on, until I realized it's here. It's finally here after 6 months of beginning to end of what part I was a part of. The operating budget has been uploaded to the website. So I was really excited, and I thought, I don't think you've probably ever had a real conversation about a city budget before, so I wanted to help walk you through your first conversation, for most of you anyway. And if you would have asked me even a year ago, hey, Tammy, you're going to be able to know and walk through an operational budget of the city of Abilene, I would have laughed in your face and said, no way. I mean, I've operated our family's budget, and I enjoy working through those kind of things, but not on a city level. I mean, a water and sewer fund, what is even that? Who wants to talk about sewers, right? And so it's funny how when you just take the next right step doing what God has asked you to do, where you end up. And this was never on my purview for any kind of thing I had anticipated in the future. So I just wanted to show you really quickly that if we go to the website, the City of Abilene website, you can scroll down and you'll see this button right here called Financial Transparency. And if you click on it, then you'll see that there's several different options you can look at. There's the annual budget, financial report, bond to debt, capital improvement program, which they call the CIP, energy uses, financial awards, which tells them why they have such confidence in encouraging us to take out bonds and things like that, and a monthly check register. And so some of these I've looked at a little bit. Some of them I haven't even touched because, we can't eat the elephant all at one time. So I did want to disclose that the financial report is what comes at the end of a budget year, and they show you what they actually spent and what actually went down, rather than just the proposed or the operating budget. So we're going to look here real quickly, and I'm going to show you that they have the annual budgets listed by year. So this year they have the fiscal year operating budget, the tax rate worksheet, and the notice of tax rates. And then 2023, they have the same thing. And then it gets down to just the information. And what's crazy is if you really want to know, you can go back all the way to 2013 and see the budget. And what's great is once we start to compare and look at things, we can see, hey, this is what happened this year. And oh, look, it changed this year, or it wasn't changed this year, or this has been going on for a long time. And again, until we understand and have the capacity to have these discussions, it's really hard for us to even engage and what's going on with our city finances. So the actual operating budget is typically about 330 pages. It's pretty consistent because it doesn't change too much. And that's true of this year. And I like how they use the same covers so you can know which the financial report and budget go together. If you so choose to print those out and have them stored in your closet to make references to different things in the budget. And I'm not saying that's me, but it's most likely me. Anyway, so here's the cover of it, and I downloaded it so I could look at it, and I wanted to show you a couple key things that I think are important just as we're getting our feet wet, because there's a lot of stuff in here that it takes a little bit of making your eyes go across before you understand it. But what was interesting is I remember when I had spent so many hours researching this, trying to understand so I could at least have an intelligent conversation, and knowing they were going to propose bonds on this next election, I just wanted to understand the ins and outs so that I could be educated and informed. And that's why I'm so intent on helping make you educated and informed, because it changes your outlook on things. And I asked a question of the city council, just trying to understand why they operate the way they do. And I haven't quite found a healthy back and forth with anyone yet, but I'm trying to work on that. So I asked the question and they answered it, and it really, it didn't satisfy the question I asked. And so it was hard because, again, city officials, they have to abide by open meetings act, where they can't meet with 3 or more people because that creates a walking forum, and that makes it hard to have any real conversations unless you have a one-on-one. And so after the council meeting, I approached one of the council members just to ask him some clarifying comments about some things I had reached out to him and questioned him about. And he said, this is a complicated budget. And he said, this is not really meant for everybody to understand. He said, because there's big words like expenditures and revenues. And it was really disheartening for a city official to talk to me that way, because I don't think that to expect us to understand words like expenditures and revenues is really that far of a stretch. And to think that that's the place where it distinguishes us from those who are the elites or the upper groupings that are allowed to understand that we common folk can't understand. And while I don't think it was meant as bad as it sounded, it did give me a check to go, wait a minute, like there is to some degree this understanding that they know what's going on and we have to trust them. And I think, as you'll see here in the budget, there's a flaw, something has flipped that needs to be flopped back. And so I want to show you a couple things about the city that I'll think help you understand this. So I really like this one. I will say this one has better graphics in the budget from years past. It was a little prettier, and I know that means absolutely nothing in the big scheme of things, but I do appreciate these graphics that I'll be showing you because they didn't seem to be as prevalent in the previous budget. So maybe that has to do with the influence of the mayor. Maybe it is the city manager who puts all this together, and I'm not sure exactly how it's determined, but here it is. All right, for the city of Abilene, Texas, we have a population of 127,000. Our median age is 32 years. 87% of people have a high school degree or higher. 26% have a bachelor's degree or higher, and the average housing income is about a little under $200,000. The average home market value is a little under $200,000, and a $73,000 average household income. But the median is at $54,000. And there are 45,000 total households. So that's pretty significant. I love numbers like this because it gives me little boundaries on to know, when we have 45,000 households, it helps me to look and see how that impacts, because households sometimes impacts different things, whereas we registered voters or like the overall population. So Abilene has only a 4% unemployment rate, where the state of Texas has a 4.5% of unemployment rate, and I missed this one too. And Abilene actually includes 113 square miles, and it was established in 1881, and we are at 1,719 feet elevation. Of course, Abilene is the county seat of Taylor County, and we have 29 parks on 1,200 acres. And I thought those were some interesting stats about Abilene. Now, when the door opened for me to start engaging more through the Sanctuary City for the Unborn Ordinance, there were so many new things that we found out through that process because it had never been done before. And so you have to understand all these little niches and the steps and legalities, and it can be a little overwhelming. But what I found when preparing to engage at a level that I didn't even know I was going to go in, I found out that we have missions, or a mission and values as a city of Abilene. And so I thought, well, it's in here and it's in a very pretty way, so I thought I would show you. So the mission of Abilene is to work together to build and maintain a community of the highest quality for present and future generations. I love that. I can get behind that. And I think this is where we can unite around a mission, because we know we're all going for the same thing. And when that happens, we respond differently because we find that we're all going for the same mission. They have what's called the RISE core values: respect, which means demonstrating through our actions that we hold ourselves and our citizens in high enough regard to do what we say we will do in the time frame we commit to. So there's that. And integrity is possessing an unwavering commitment to doing the right things right and keeping commitments to our citizens, co-workers, and others. Service above self, fostering a servant's heart in ourselves and each other by conscientiously doing what is best for the community in all cases. Excellence in all we do, recognizing the importance of working together to meet everyone's needs and treating everyone with dignity, courtesy, and respect. And those are the RISE core values. Okay, and then surely this would be a review for you. You should know all these people because they are elected officials on our city council and our appointed leaders. So, of course, we have our mayor, Weldon Hurt. Shane Price is in place 1. Lynn Beard is in place 2. And these two are actually up for re-election in May, and the first Saturday in May's election. Then we have Blaze Reagan in place 3, Brian Yates in place 4, Kyle McAllister in place 5, and Travis Craver in place 6. And what we'll see is that every year 2 city council positions are up for election. So that helps because the way our city is set up, there are 3 representatives or 3 council members that live in the north side of the railroad tracks that go down the south first and north first, and then 3 that live on the south side. And so each of the odd places live on the north side and the even ones live in the south side. Now they council at large, but they are voted in so that there's somewhat of representation from both sides, from all over. So they have strategic goals and objectives. And I think learning these things is so helpful because then you can go back and say, listen, effective governance is what we're talking about. And there's ways we can say, hey, I don't know if this is effective. Can you show me this is effective? Or, hey, I think this is a more effective way to govern our city. Like just that one alone gives you lots of opportunities for having really healthy conversations. The second one is sound financial discipline, high quality of life, well-maintained and reliable infrastructure, excellent service, economic growth, and engaged community. And the last one is where I'm really pushing hard to engage our community, because for so long, somewhere along the lines, we thought that we were not supposed to really have a say or part, because I've been going to council meetings now, pretty consistently for over a year. I've been attending them long in that, but pretty consistently over a year. And, you can tell based on who's in attendance what's going on. You can tell that people who show up are for celebrating the service of different employees, or if there's an issue that needs to be talked about, or if there's an issue that's celebrated. It's really interesting. The crowd changes. And what I would hope for is, like I've talked about, I'm still trying to figure out how to get a city council meeting moved in the evening so that we can offer up more opportunities for people to be engaged. And I think that is a great reason to point that out. If you want to engage community, they need to be able to show up and have these conversations at the council meetings. Okay, and then here are our appointed leaders. We have our city manager, Robert Hanna, Shauna Atkins, our city secretary, Stanley Smith, our city attorney, and Chase Craig, our municipal court judge. All right, so those are people that you should know and pray for because we want to bless them and we want them to be successful in their endeavors as they lead our city because we benefit from that. So here's where it matters that the councilman said that I cannot understand budgets. It's not right because the citizens of Abilene are at the top of this organization chart. So if the citizens can't understand this proposed budget or this operating budget, then it needs to be adapted to where we can look at this and understand what's going on. Now, there may be some stuff that we need clarification, but it shouldn't be so complicated that they expect that the citizens can't understand it because it is so complicated. The mayor and the city council actually serve the citizens of Abilene. So when they talk about doing stuff for themselves or they doing stuff for the city, if we're not okay with it, then that's where we say, listen, you serve us. But the great part is they don't have to. Once they're elected, they can do whatever they want to. However, that's where elections matter. And we get to have an opportunity to put someone in who represents us the way we think. And, for example, the mayor position is important because he gets to appoint all boards and commissions. And they're the ones that are kind of the front lines of having conversations with some processes in our city. Then we have our city secretary, city manager, city attorney, and the municipal court judge. And under those, of course, the fire and police department, the city manager overlooks those and communicates with them. Then they are working towards getting the pay raise up to an average standard, I believe, of those around. And I think, they are at 94% in comparable pay to things around. And of course, we just hired a new chief who will start in February, who's from Oklahoma. And we should see a change around there because, it's hard. This has been a different year because we had a chief resign, then we had an interim chief, and now we are finally getting into some more stability. And I think that's good. We have a deputy city manager and an assistant city manager, and then here are the different areas. And so the more you pay attention to what's going on, you'll get to know who's in charge of these: finance, human resources, library, parks and recreation, zoo, transportation services, public health, information technology, planning and development services, public works, and water utilities. Okay, so what I want to show you in here is just one page. It's kind of at the beginning, and it talks about the fiscal year budget highlights. Again, these are the highlights, so this is not any details. Obviously, it's just one page. But I wanted to show you so that you could start recognizing what things mean. FY means fiscal year, and they originally proposed a fiscal year 2024 budget with revenues, which mean the money you make, the money coming in to pay the bills. It's like most people have a job that provides revenue. All right, so that's so complicated. I'm glad we were able to have that discussion. It is $334 million for this year, the revenues, the income, the money coming in. The expenditures are our costs, and that's what we have to pay in bills and debt service and employees, or payroll and all those things. And it is $344 million. Now, if you notice, this is almost actually $335 million. You'll notice that they did the math for us, and they showed that that's a difference of $9 million. So if you look up here, it says revenues over, and then in parentheses, it's under. So it's under expenditures. We see parentheses. We know that there's more bills to pay than there is money coming in. And these are the things that I think of. Well, how is it that if we're working to have, I would imagine as a municipal government, we want to have a zero-sum budget where there is, and that may not be the right words, but we want this to be as close to zero as possible and maybe even a little under, because we know we always have expenditures that we're not aware of. Of course, there are things like that budgeted into the budget, so that's not too big of a deal, but $9 million is a lot. And so what I would as a citizen do would be go back and look at last year's budget and go, how much was there over under? Was it the same? Was it close? Is this normal? Because that's my first question. Is it normal for a city to be operating in $9 million over their revenues? And I don't know. So those are the questions I ask. And that's why I think it's important for us just to start looking through this. So hopefully that didn't put you to sleep, but it is important for us to understand how our city budgets money. And, we want to know that when we see things going on, that we can be excited that we know how they're paid for. Like, when we start seeing construction on a road, or we see improvements in different parts of the city, we know what they're going for. And we know it goes back to our core values, our mission, the goals of the council. And we can say, okay, that fits under being fiscally responsible and stuff like that. So I hope that makes sense. All right, so the only announcement I'm going to shamelessly plug is the Taylor County Republican Primary Candidate Forum on Monday, February 5th. And the reason why I'm shamelessly plugging this is because our county is primarily Republican. And what's important when we have Republican primaries is this is where the election is. A lot of people will think, oh, the election's in November. But actually in our county, in certain positions, what happens in this election will affect the outcome of the whole election, because the Democrats do not vote strongly enough, and there's not that many Democrats voting to actually make a difference. So they're not necessarily irrelevant, but they really don't have much say as long as we remain a strong Republican county. And so the Taylor County Republican Primary Candidate Forum is going to be held on Monday, February 5th from 5 at start. The doors open at 5 p.m. and you're able to show up, and there'll be some some snacks and some drinks, and you can visit around with the different candidates that will be present so that you can engage with them and become informed about their positions and why you would want them or not want them to represent you in the different positions. And it's at the great facility 201 Mesquite Center. So the reason why this matters is because there's not really many opportunities for us to always have access to these candidates. And so we do have some long-term incumbents in our U.S. Congress seat and our Texas House District seat 71. And it's, you may not even know who they are, or you may know. You may see their signs, or you may have heard the name, or you may have been here around long enough that you know who these people are. But what's great is we're going to have some of their challengers there present to also address some of the issues, so you can see where they line up and if they seem to be a better fit for our representation for our county, or if we're good to go with the incumbent. So we have Chance Ferguson, Vance Boyd, and incumbent Jody Arrington running for U.S. Congress Texas District 19. And then we have Texas House District 71. We have Liz Case and incumbent Stan Lambert running against each other. And I believe both of those will be there, and so that's going to be really great to hear from both of them in their positions and what is happening with our Texas House. And I believe the challengers will be there, but Jody Arrington will have representation there to meet with you and talk to you about his position as a U.S. Congressman. And then local races, we have Taylor County Sheriff, which currently it's Ricky Bishop. So Shay Bailey and Elias Carrasquillo Jr. is running against the incumbent. And then this one is a little specific, so if you do not live in Taylor County Precinct 1, then you're not going to be able to vote on this one, but we have Javier Villarreal and incumbent Randy Williams who are going to be there to engage. And I think we don't even have any opportunities to engage with them, and I love this because you can go up to them and say, hi, I'm Tammy, I live here, what is your most important goal, or, thank you for your service, or what do you see that you're going to offer that the incumbent is not going to offer, and normalize conversations with our representatives, because they can't represent us if they don't have communication with us. And I do know that there are some forms of communication, but again, we've got to get into a better place where we regularly communicate with our representatives. So this event is presented by the Taylor County Republican Party and the Abilene Republican Women. It's free, and we want lots of people to show up, because that helps us to know that we are becoming more educated and more informed, and not just voting like our neighbors because we just know the name of the person they're voting for. We want to know the issues of our representative, and as a Republican county, we want to make sure those who represent us are truly Republican and standing on, at least we know that the Texas Republican Party has some platforms that are pretty significant, and we want to make sure that these elected representatives match up with that, and then also the bigger picture. But what's great is we have the most power to affect change here in our city. And by doing that, we can then impact how the Texas House and Congress is run, and also how the U.S. Congress and the U.S. Senate is run, because of our input into those places. So that's my spiel for that. Let's go ahead and move into the week in review. Okay, this week in review is going to be a little bit more than a week in review, because I was surprised that they even started up this week. I was thinking we were going to get a 2-week break, but nope, the city does not rest. There's no rest for the weary. They took a week off during Christmas and New Year's, and then they hit it hard again. And what was really fun, I've told you that if you come to the website and sign in and give them your email address, they will hook you up with emails to tell you about what's going on, because remember I told you need to check out those board meetings and start to understand the processes and the conversations that are being had in our city, so that if you come up with a notification being sent to you about whether you oppose or favor something, you can know how important it is that you respond and what the heck is going on? So I guess right towards the end of the year, I was shocked to find out one day my email had over 75 emails from the city telling me of new events on calendars. So I painstakingly went through and put them on my calendar so I could kind of have an idea of what was coming. And that was interesting. That wasn't the only large dump of emails I've gotten, but this is my first new year with the city, and so I was not prepared for that. So we're working on getting our calendar set up so we can be prepared and aware of what's going on. So with that said, I knew that there was not a lot of time for me to do a podcast over the holidays because the likelihood of you stepping in and listening to the one or two meetings I had to share was probably not worth my time or your time to talk about. So I just wanted to highlight one city council meeting that happened at the end of the month on December 21st. And let's look here. I think I have the video to play here. And so why this was important is because they had the final reading, and I have to let you know, I understood that you read an ordinance once and you read an ordinance twice, and on the second time you read it, it's called the final reading. But here, look at this little disclaimer or this little information thing here. It says, hold a discussion and public hearing. So I guess if you wanted to look at that paragraph, calling it a public hearing is fine, but it doesn't look much different except from different. The final reading and the first reading don't look completely different, but they also don't look exactly the same. But now I learned something new. I didn't realize that they held it in regular agenda so that it could have a public hearing. I always wondered why they didn't read them both in regular agenda or have them both on the regular agenda so there could be more discussion about it, seeing that it's something that's changing our city laws, but that's not how they do it. So if Tammy ran the world, it would be done differently. But clearly, Tammy's not running the world, and I'm learning how to step into what is already in place. So they had a public hearing and recommended some changes to the sanctuary city for the unborn ordinance. And I don't want to belabor this over and over again, but I want you to understand the significance of this. This was something that was tried to be brought before the city council for several years, and the city council did not decide that they wanted to have a public discussion or put it on the agenda to vote on it. And so because they chose not to do that, the only alternative option was for a citizen initiative petition, which actually took place. That was the first time in the history of our city that citizens got together and signed the petition in the amount of over 7,000 signatures, 7 to 10,000 signatures, maybe even up to 12,000 signatures to say we wanted to put this on the agenda. It got put on the agenda. The city council said, we don't want to touch this. We want the citizens to vote on it. So they put it off to the ballot in November. The citizens voted in November and passed it 53 to 47% that they wanted the ordinance. And then when the new mayor and several new councilmen were elected in May the following year, they decided the citizens, some of the councilmen said that the citizens did not know what they were voting for, and we needed to clarify it. So what was interesting is that this ordinance was not like a typical ordinance where the city charter says the city council can actually make changes to ordinances, because most of the time the ordinances are created by the city, and that makes sense. But this was a publicly voted on ordinance, and so it was odd after the council said that they didn't want to talk about it or deal with it. They just wanted the citizens to vote on it, that they would try and then change it. And so it was really troubling. But thankfully, as we waited this out and looked to see what the outcome was, there was very minimal. There was some changes, but it was very minimal and nothing to really even discuss much about, because they just changed a word from maybe like spontaneous to accidental, which kind of lined up more with what the hospital's language was, or, maybe they changed the word contraband to mean things to another word. I can't quite remember what the word was, but it was very insignificant. But they had the blessing of both the authors, Mark Lee Dixon and Jonathan F. Mitchell. And that's important, because had they done something that the writers or the authors did not support, it could have really caused a lot of problems with this ordinance. And so that is good. It was pretty uneventful, and now we get to move on and take care of things that are more important than that. So I just wanted to let you know, if you want to play the game now, I've decided to let you get a little sneak peek. Where's Waldo? Where's Tammy? I'm back there in the background. I don't like being on camera, but look, no holds bar, because clearly I'm on the camera now more than I ever have and ever wanted to be. But, I just pretend like I'm having a one-on-one conversation with you, and that makes me feel a lot less intimidated by what I'm actually doing. Okay, so there's only 2 meetings this week. Like I said, I was expecting for a little calmer week, but we did have our standard meetings. There are some pretty standard dates, like planning and zoning is always the first Tuesday. I believe parks is like the third Tuesday or the second. I'll try and get on a schedule for you so you can understand. It's pretty consistent. And so I think unless there's not stuff to discuss or they don't have a quorum, that's when they will cancel it. But it's pretty easy going as far as that's concerned. So let me start this one. So this was a planning and zoning committee, and I like this one because they do hold an invocation every time. Not every board does that, and I just think that's great because I know there's a lot of godly men and women who serve on our different boards and commissions and our council, and I love it that we do recognize who our authority and freedom, or who all of our rights come from, right? Our inalienable rights come from God, and so that's what they're there to support and protect. All right, so here is the blessed Buffalo Gap issue. This property has been tabled 3 times, I think. It has been going on and on and on. And this is why I'm doing this podcast, because these people get up and they talk about how they're frustrated with certain aspects of what has been handled by the city, and they don't understand what they're trying to communicate. So you can see all those red dots there right now, how many people disagree with what is going on in these zoning changes. It started off with a PPD zoning, and they wanted to change it to general retail, and the citizens didn't want it changed. But apparently, even if a PPD was there, which is how it's always been, Starbucks and Golden Chick shouldn't have been allowed on that lot the way it was. So I'm not sure how those got approved in that zoning that hadn't been changed, but maybe they changed the zoning and I'm just not familiar with that. No, it looks like they're even changing the Starbucks to general retail. And so the problem is they have a lot of loud noise. Drive-thrus handle business differently than, say, like a sit-down restaurant or an office building. So you have different frequency of customers and things like that. And so had I been able to be a part of this process, and again, I'm not the answer to all things, but like I wish I could have said, listen, transportation on Buffalo Gap, that's TxDOT. And I learned that from the first meeting. So by the third meeting, you really can't, the citizens were like, I don't know what else to tell you, but there's something wrong about this. And they didn't have the words to articulate what was really going on. And the owner of the property was trying to accommodate them, and I feel in good faith, to change it to a more restrictive zoning, but I just think things got the wires crossed too early on, and it was really hard for anyone to move forward. And so at the end of the day, the planning and zoning passed the changes to the particular property, and now it will go to council this Thursday, and it'll most likely probably be approved. I don't foresee anything going differently than what has happened. Then the next case we have is a multifamily case, which I thought was really interesting. Back this summer, there was a couple, one of, I think he was a police officer. I don't think he was retired. He was a police officer, and they were going to plan to build a multifamily next to his property on, I don't think it was Old Answer Road, but it was out off of, a little bit outside of, I don't know where it was. I know it was in the north. That's what I can say. And at the planning and zoning meeting, they passed it and said, he was saying this isn't what we wanted. We didn't buy this property to have apartment complexes next to us, and this isn't right. And they went ahead and approved it anyway. And then it went to city council. And this is the first time I've ever in all of my 2+ years attending city council meetings or watching city council meetings way back when, have heard that it was motioned to approve this zoning change, and not one person would second it. So it didn't even go to vote. And so they supported the police officer in his plight to not have this zone changed. And so then this particular multifamily zoning, it's like not even an acre, and they're going to somehow put a multifamily property on that. And I don't know how the logistics of that work, but one of the ladies was saying it's 25 feet from our house, and there's going to be trash, because that's what the police officer said. There's going to be trash. There's increased crime. There's lots of negative aspects to having property that is not owned by the people living in it. And the planning and zoning also passed this zoning change for this particular property as if they had to. And again, I'm still learning the processes. I don't know why you have to do anything, but we get to see what happens and play this out and learn and grow, so that when the next time we can be informed and educated. So if you get one of those little rezoning notices, pay attention and ask questions, because it's important. So like they were saying, like they didn't even see on their changing of this, I think this lady especially, she was like, you sent us a zoning change, but you didn't even tell us the different sections. There's 3 sections that had different zoning changes. And so it's just really hard to understand. And so that's why we need to become more, have the responsibility on us to understand what's going on, so we can be more successful in that way. Okay, and then the last part I wanted to show you was this. And we talked about this before. And again, the employee who works for the city, his name is Randy something. I'm sorry, I didn't catch his name. He did a fabulous presentation about this historic background of making a RAI, which is Rebuild Abilene Infill. And what they're trying to do is, it used to, pre-1946, home lots were a certain size and pretty standard, but after 1946, they started changing and being different. And so the problem is, if you come in and try and do infill development, which is basically an empty lot that you want to build a new structure on, you have to maintain the historic theme of the neighborhood. And if it's a really small lot, it's really hard to maintain that because of house sizes these days. And so they wanted to take out one of the steps, because right now it takes about 4 or more months to be able to go through this process just to build a house. And I do know one of the big pushes the mayor had on his campaign was infill development. So I'm curious as to know how this came about, if this has been in the works for years, and who knows, maybe I'll reach out to the employee and ask him, can you give me some historic information about how this came to be, because it seems like this is a good plan to help make it easier for people to infill, because we know, work on the infill development, because we know that raises the standard of living for everyone when there's not empty lots that are vacant and collecting trash or having overgrown grass. And so they're going to rezone it. And so that if there's in these certain neighborhoods, there's 10 neighborhoods, if they're in these 10 neighborhoods, then they don't have to worry about going through the Landmarks Commission to get the historic information approved, and it just kind of has to stay within the general theme of the neighborhood. Like, you're not going to have a super modern home if it's, a lot of craftsmen or things like that. There's going to still be some continuity, but taking out some of the red tape. And I can always get behind taking out red tape to make sure that property owners and potential property owners have more freedom to make sure our community lives at a better standard. Okay, so the next and only meeting for the week is the Boards of Building Standards. All right, so amazingly, they again had 9 cases, and I don't know if they're just getting through these, trying to maintain it, or if this is keeping their head above water, or if the cases are backlogging. I can't even imagine, but these are a lot of cases. And so what's interesting is I tried to do this multiple times, and it took me over 10 minutes to download this packet, which was like only 150 pages, like the budget took nothing. I don't know if it was all the graphics or what, but it took 10 minutes, and I was about to pull my hair out and say, I don't know if it's worth it, but I persevered so that you can have the information you need. I think there was just a lot of standard cases. It looks like some people who had started rehabbing and never finished. And I guess a lot of people don't realize the cost of rehabbing a home, because it seems like people just run out of money. And so we had cases that were back with inactive utilities from 2017. And we had cases where the most exciting one was the last one, where this guy kept taking off the stop work order on the thing, and it said cannot be removed except by a city official, and he removed it 3 times. And so he's unfortunately having to deal with some criminal charges because he violated that and took it down. And so and he was asking for an extension of time, and they said, he's like, are you going to be able to do this in 30 days? He's like, no problem. And one of the guys on the board was like, I don't think that's realistic. He can't do it in 30 days. And he also said he had no financing. And so if you're at this stage of the game where you have a history of not complying or not following through with your 30-60 plans, then you're not probably going to get any more grace. And so I think wisely they decided not to give this guy any more extensions, because he had violated so many aspects of it. And you have to honor and respect the way our community is run and the laws. More importantly, you have to obey the laws in order to be able to do stuff. And I'm grateful for those who took time to pay attention to this, and the employees who have worked tirelessly to gather all that information. It is a lot of information. All right, so I think that wraps up the weeks in review, and now we're going to move to week in preview. All right, this week is going back in full force. We got a lot going on. There's a lot happening. I know we're all back in full swing, and it was wonderful having time with family and friends, but now we're back to the brass tacks of just doing normal life. So Tuesday is a busy day. If you don't have a lot planned, you can have a full docket by all that's going on in the city alone. So we have the Board of Adjustment meeting, which is on January 9th from 8:30 to 10:30. It's usually recorded in the council chambers. Then that afternoon at 3 o'clock, we have the Citizen Advisory Board for People with Disabilities, and that typically is recorded because it is also in council chambers. And then if you would like to jump over to Betty Hardwick Center at 5:15, you can see the Betty Hardwick Center Board of Trustees, and that is actually at Betty Hardwick Center. Then on Wednesday, January 10th, we have the Airport Board Development Board meeting at 3:30 to 5:30 or to 5 at the council chambers. So it should be recorded. And that is all for this week on the boards. I went too far. Let's look here. And then for the city council meeting, we have a council meeting on January 11th at 8:30. And so the agenda is on there. There's a lot of interesting information, a lot of opportunities to learn what's going on in our city and see how it goes. There's some board appointments happening. And there's times where I feel like I am not ever going to really make inroads into doing something that really makes a difference in our city. And as soon as I start thinking about that, I run into one of you out in public and you encourage me. And I have to realize, like I spoke to a group of people on Saturday of last week, it's so interesting when we look back at people's lives, we respond differently to their outcomes of their lives rather than what happened during the life. And John Quincy Adams was president of our nation, and he also served in Congress for 28 years. Well, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. He was a congressman, and for 28 years, he worked to end slavery. He wanted to end slavery, and he was unsuccessful in ending slavery, where he ended up dying actually on Congress. He had a heart attack on the floor of Congress and ended up later dying from that, and never saw his dream come to fruition, except for he spent some time investing in a young freshman congressman, and he helped him to see the importance of abolition. And even though they didn't work together for very long, later that freshman congressman turned into our President Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln was the one that brought the end of slavery. And I thought that was so good because, one of the things we've learned in Patriot Academy's biblical citizenship is that duty is ours and results are God's. And that's what he said. He said that we don't have to get the results. And so what I want to encourage you is, even though we are just average citizens, there's going to be a season where we're going to have to put in more effort and more work to make a better impact in what is going on in our community, to where we can get it to where the future generations have a lot more ease and understanding because we've given them a framework to work with. And back to one of those goals, I think it's in the RISE aspect. I can't remember which letter it was, but they said, for future generations, or maybe that was a mission statement for future generations. And we want to make sure that we are doing, it's our mission. We work together and build and maintain a community of highest quality for the present and future generations. And we know that if any things are not maintained well, it's going to take some real muscle to get it back to where it's maintainable. And that's what we're working to do. So anytime I get discouraged and, I see that the board appointments that I've applied for, I'm not getting on, I know why, and it's okay. But I just want to say the reality is we don't just respond when we get what we want. We respond to what God calls us to do. And if we're doing that, we can't lose because, again, duty is ours. Results are up to God. So with that being said, I would love it if you would subscribe and share this, whatever platform you listen on, because we want to make sure that other people are aware of how they can become educated and informed on how to make an impact in Abilene in the big country. And that starts with you just getting the word out by sharing this podcast. I'm doing my part as best as I can, and it's going to take a village to get us all ready to go and be able to maintain a community of the highest quality for present and future generations. So with that being said, until next time, y'all have a great week.